into the pump fake, everybody. Jarrett Bailey with you as always. And if you're seeing the title of this, which I assume you are if you clicked on the video, post free agency power rankings is what we're diving into today. I'll put the ticker at the bottom of the screen. I'm not going to dive into each individual team. Obviously, the big ones I'll talk about. And if you want to, read why I have your team at a certain place, you can go read the article over on USA Today, Touchdown Wire, which I wrote up a few days ago and is available for you to read now. So again, if I don't touch on your team in depth, please head over to Touchdown Wire on USA Today and get your fill for your team as to why I put them where I put them. But like I said, we'll dive into like the big ones, especially the top 10 teams. As you can see at the bottom, the Chiefs are number one, which I don't think anybody's going to really argue that. Defending Super Bowl champions. They just added Hollywood Brown, re-signed Chris Jones. They did trade L'Jarius Sneed, and I will say I did the write-up for all this before the L'Jarius Sneed trade. So, you're going to see where I have the Titans ranked down there. I would push them ahead of teams like the Saints, the Bears, the Vikings, maybe the Buccaneers right now. So they would move up a few slots just based off of what their roster looks like right now. But again, wrote that ahead of the L'Jarius Sneed trade. So the Chiefs are one that doesn't need much explaining. Neither does the 49ers being at 2. I have the Bills at 3. And some people might argue with me that might be a little bit too high for Buffalo. As long as they have 17 under center, that window is open. I would have liked to see them be more aggressive from the standpoint of getting another perimeter receiver and making one of these splash trades that we've seen. The Browns traded 2 day 3 picks for Jerry Jeudy. Bills couldn't have done that. Now, I wouldn't want them to have given Jerry Jeudy the massive money that the Browns did, but they couldn't have traded 2 day 3 picks to get Jerry Jeudy on the outside opposite of Stephon Diggs. They couldn't have traded a 6th-round pick and a player, or at least topped what the Steelers or what the Panthers gave the Steelers for Deontay Johnson, which was cornerback Dante Jackson and a 6th-round pick. The Bills have 3 5th-round picks. They couldn't have traded 2 of them for Deontay Johnson. Said, all right, here's 2 5s. Well, take it or leave it. It's arguably a better deal than what Carolina was offering. So I would have liked to have seen them be more aggressive. But on the defensive side of the ball, getting Matt Milano back alongside Terrell Bernard next year is going to be. People forget how good both of those guys are. And there was a lot of internal debate within fans. It's like, oh, man, they really should have brought back Tremaine Edmonds. And then Terrell Bernard just had an incredible year. And unfortunately, he was hurt against Kansas City. Matt Milano went down in London against Jacksonville, and they lost him for the year. They had a lot of injuries last year. They're going to get Daquan Jones back. They just signed Austin Johnson on the defensive line. They re-signed A.J. Epinesa, which a lot of people didn't expect them to do. And Von Miller voluntarily took a pay cut, which opens up their cap situation. So I like the addition of Curtis Samuel. I think that they're going to use him very similar to how the 49ers use Deebo Samuel, where he'll be, they'll put him in the backfield at times. They'll mostly utilize him in the slot. They can put him out wide if they want to, but he's going to be a predominant slot backfield gadget guy. And they still need to address that need in the first round. Or, if they're able to make a splash trade still, because there's rumors that, hey, Brandon Ayuk could be available. Hey, Terry McLaurin could be available. So I would like to see the Bills do something more in terms of getting another receiver opposite of Stephon Diggs. I put the Bengals at 4, and I think too many people are forgetting how good the Bengals are. And I think it's easy for them to forget that because, Joe Burrow was hurt all of last year, even when he was playing. I mean, he had the calf. But when he came back after the bye week, we saw, oh, yeah, Cincinnati's good. And then, unfortunately, he had the hand injury as well. So it was just a really unfortunate year for the Bengals. And their biggest question right now is the secondary. And, that's understandable. When you lose Chidobe Awuzie, who followed Brian Callahan, the former Bengals offensive coordinator, to Tennessee. But they did add a really good veteran safety in Geno Stone. And offensively, like, this team is still really good. Like, Jamar Chase is still there. I don't think they're going to move T. Higgins. If they do, it'll be a draft day trade where, Carolina, we assume that all the conversations like, oh, Carolina can give 33 or 39 for T. Higgins, which they very well could. But the way that the trade market has been this offseason, man, like, it might not be as big a haul as originally expected for T. Higgins. I already talked about it. He's better than Jerry Jeudy. He's better than Deontay Johnson. But is he, 2 day 3 picks for a trade to jump for a second round pick for a trade better? I don't know. We've had similar conversations around Brandon Ayuk where it's like, oh, yeah, he might go for a first round pick. Well, the market's telling us that's not going to happen. So I do think that T. Higgins will be a Bengal come this season. They also add Mike Gesicki, a vertical threat at tight end. They bring in Zach Moss to complement Chase Brown in the backfield, which I think is going to be a very good 1-2 punch for the Bengals at running back. And again, I think that too many people have recency bias where they're like, oh, yeah, we'll put the Bengals on the back burner because Joe Burrow was gone all last year. And I think that a lot of people seem to be forgetting that Joe Burrow is one of the 3 best quarterbacks in football. I think the Bengals are going to be really good. Spoiler alert, depending on how this draft goes, they might be my pick to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I think they're going to be terrific. I think they're going to be right back in the thick of things. So don't be surprised with the Bengals being very good again when they win the AFC North again, and if Joe Burrow gets them to their second Super Bowl in 4 years. I got the Texans at 5. Man, the Texans are so fun. And it's very clear that D'Amico Ryans has a plan in mind. He's the plan for Houston and D'Amico Ryans is, well, I have my quarterback, and I'm going to beat the piss out of yours. They sign Danielle Hunter to put opposite of Will Anderson. They also bring in Azeez Al-Shahir to the defense. They add Danico Autry as well. Their plan is we are going to be disruptors up front. We are going to get constant, sustainable pressure on the quarterback, and we're going to make his life hell week in and week out. Doesn't matter who it is, we're going to be coming for him. Offensively, we have a stud in C.J. Stroud. We're going to get Tank Dell back. They bring back Noah Brown, their third receiver. That was a really good re-signing for them. Nico Collins as well. They trade for Joe Mixon, which I think at worst is probably going to be a lateral move from what Devin Singletary was doing along with Dameon Pierce. But this team's only going to get better. And C.J. Stroud is only going to get better. So I think that this is a team that could be in the AFC Championship game this year. Should that linear progression be there with C.J. Stroud, which everything that we've seen on the field says it will be, Texans are going to be fun. And I love the way that they've addressed this offseason. They still need to get a cornerback opposite of Derek Stingley. Steven Nelson's a free agent. But this team's going to be very fun. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing them back on the field after a really successful season last year in which they won a playoff game. I think that they can take that next step and get to the AFC Championship game. And hey, sign me up for a Bengals-Texans AFC Championship game between Joe Burrow and C.J. Stroud. I'm absolutely on board with that. So the Texans are 5. Detroit 6. Bringing in DJ Reader on the defensive line. I know he's coming off the quad injury, but when he's healthy, he's arguably the best run-stopping interior defensive lineman in football. Put him next to Aiden Hutchinson. I think that that's a great signing. And again, Ben Johnson comes back again. And they're returning mostly everybody on that team and on that offense. When you have the, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, they need to get a perimeter receiver because Amon-Ra is a predominant slot guy. They need somebody who can stretch the field vertically. So we'll see how they address that need. But I fully expect Detroit to be right back in the mix for an NFC Championship game appearance, a potential Super Bowl appearance. I don't think that there's going to be much drop off there for the Lions, if any at all. This one will surprise some people for how high I have Atlanta. I have them at 7. I really just like how they've gone about their offseason. And actually, at the bottom of the screen, I did forget to switch it, so I'm going to edit this ticker real quick. I originally had them at 8 behind a certain team. And then in the write-up in the middle of it, I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to put this team behind them for reasons that I'll dive into here in a minute. But I had the Falcons at 7, and you can see who I switched them with at the bottom of the ticker. But this is a team that had a top 10 defense and success rate last year. And the skill position guys are obviously there with Bijan Robinson and Drake London and Kyle Pitts. They bring over Rondale Moore. Somehow they traded for Rondale Moore. Like they sent away Desmond Ridder and got Rondale Moore back. I don't know what the hell the Cardinals were thinking in that situation. Granted, they didn't really use Rondale Moore the way that they should have. But putting him in this offense, Zach Robinson is going to find a way to use him, and it's going to be very fun to watch. And obviously they bring in Kirk Cousins, which is a massive upgrade at quarterback for the Falcons, going from years of Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota and Taylor Heineke to now, they bring in Kirk Cousins, and he instantly makes them the best team in that division by a respectable margin. This is a team that I think can win 11, 12 games, that I think can go to the NFC Championship game with that defense, those skill position guys, and now a massive upgrade at quarterback. Kirk Cousins was on pace for almost 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns last year before he got injured. He's having the best year of his career. And you give him those weapons, and that defense, in a really easy division, I think Atlanta's going to be really good. And I put Baltimore at 8. And I don't want to dive too much into my thoughts on Baltimore because I am going to be doing a write-up about my thoughts on Baltimore for USA Today. But I think that there's a real conversation to be had about last year might have been their best chance. And, there's going to be quarterbacks that, we look at the AFC and how stacked that conference is at quarterback. There's going to be some of them that just don't ever get over that hump. It's going to be a decent handful of them. And I think Lamar is going to be in that group of guys that just don't make it to a Super Bowl. And, whether that's, whether you agree with that or not, like I said, I'm going to do a complete write-up on it for USA Today, just giving my overall thoughts on the Ravens and why I feel that way. I just think that looking at them right now, they are noticeably worse on paper. They lose defensive coordinator Mike McDonald to Seattle, who's now their new head coach. They lose Geno Stone. They lose Patrick Queen. This is a team that last year was largely built off of what they did defensively. And the defense beating up on teams. Like you look at how they beat the 49ers, the Lions, the Seahawks. The defense had a boatload of turnovers in all of those games and just beat the hell out of the offense. And another thing with Baltimore is like they can beat up bad teams and teams that don't have elite quarterbacks. But once you introduce that elite quarterback, it becomes a struggle. So, and I understand like everybody's freaking out about the Derrick Henry signing, but pardon me if I don't think a 30-year-old running back is going to put a team over the hump when you got to go through Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. So on paper, and hell, probably during the regular season, like there's going to be a few games where Derrick Henry goes off and everybody's going to freak out about it. But, it's cool if you can run for, 190 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Giants. But eventually you're going to have to play actual teams. And I just don't think that Baltimore is equipped to get over that hump. And I don't think that they are going to be a team that gets to the Super Bowl. I think that 2023 was their best chance to do it, and I think they blew it. So they're still going to be a team that wins 10 games, 9 or 10 games. It's going to be in the wild card hunt at the very least. They'll probably be a playoff team if Lamar Jackson stays healthy. But once they get to the playoffs, man, they are Lamar Jackson's 0-4 in playoff games in which his opponent scores more than 13 points. It's not going to cut it. So I take the Ravens seriously as a good regular season team that will get to the playoffs. I do not take them seriously as Super Bowl contenders. I just don't. And again, I'm going to do a write up as to why. But Baltimore, I don't think that they're not in my Super Bowl bubble, and I don't fear them if I'm an AFC team, like a Cincinnati, like a Buffalo, like a Kansas City. I just don't think that they are in that class. But like I said, they're still going to be a good regular season team. They'll be 8. I have Philadelphia at 9. Look, man, there's clear issues with the infrastructure there in Philadelphia, where they had a monumental collapse last year, and like they still have trouble. Like, there's still holes in that defense. They just signed Devin White, who's noticeably dropped off in the past couple of years. So they still have a probable hole at off-ball linebacker, and their corners are old and getting worse, which they haven't addressed. So I'm skeptical about the Eagles. In the NFC East, it's going to come down to Philadelphia and Dallas. If I had to guess, it'll probably be Philadelphia, just because that's a division where parity is at a premium, because I don't think there's been like a repeated division winner, or there's only been one repeated division winner in that division since like 2003. So if I had to guess who's going to win it, it won't be Dallas again. Dallas has their own problems, which we'll dive into. I don't believe in anybody in the NFC East. Dallas or Philadelphia will probably win the division, or at the very least, they'll finish with 10 wins and be in the playoffs. But right now, man, like they have a lot to prove, and there seems to be a lot of dysfunction within that locker room and that coaching staff right now, where I can't take them seriously, compared to teams like San Francisco and Detroit. But again, they'll still be in that mix in the NFC, and they're number 9. Number 10, though, the only reason I didn't put the Rams above the Eagles is just because like there are a lot of questions for the Rams defensively right now, especially after Aaron Donald retired. But offensively, man, Stafford looked like a top 5 quarterback down the stretch last year. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are a tremendous 1-2 punch at receiver. Kyron Williams was terrific last year, and their offensive line just got better. So the fact that they add Jonah Jackson to an already solid offensive line, that interior looks really good. Defensively, again, though, there's a lot of question marks, just because yes, they got a lot out of that defense last year, but it also resulted in Raheem Morris leaving to get a head coaching job. How good are they going to be without Raheem Morris, and how good are they going to be able to fill those holes in the draft? That'll be something to look out for. They added Cam Curl at safety, which is a move that I really liked. Getting a guy who is a veteran but is still only 24 back there. I think that getting that combination of youth and experience is great, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Rams utilize him on the back end. They also brought back Darius Williams, who was released by Jacksonville, to play corner. So I think the Rams, at minimum, they've added veterans in the secondary, which is good. But there still are questions that I have for them going into 2024 on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they're going to be awesome. And no one's going to be surprised, when they're, a wild card team, or, hell, who knows? Maybe they win the NFC West this year. I'm not ruling that out. Now, I know all the 49ers are going to start screaming at me about how great their roster is and what have you, but would it surprise me if the Rams win the NFC West? No. And then, we go to Miami at 11. Look, man, I'm sure that they'll be fun in the regular season again, but eventually you're going to have to go up north and you're going to have to play in a cold environment. And anytime they do, it's pretty much wraps. We saw that against Kansas City last year. They were just completely cut off at the knee because it was chilly outside. Didn't affect the Chiefs at all. And if you can find a defense where you're confident that you can play press man against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle like the Chiefs did last year, oh no, the Dolphins are cooked. Because if they can't get into that rhythm offensively, then they're done. So I don't take the Dolphins seriously as Super Bowl contenders. They've also lost a lot of pieces on the defensive side of the ball. They lost Robert Hunt, their guard, to Carolina. I think that they're better cornerback-wise with Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller now, but they've lost a lot of players this offseason, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I think losing Robert Hunt is a big loss for them on the interior of their offensive line. So again, they'll be a team that's full of splash plays offensively like they were last year. But when it comes time to play actual teams, I don't think that they're going to be able to make any sort of noise, which is going to lead to questions of, okay, what do they do at quarterback? If you're the Dolphins, you cannot extend Tua because it's clear that he's not going to be the guy that gets you over the hump. Again, he could put up big numbers in the regular season. He can have big games against bad defenses like the Panthers and like the Chargers, and that's great. That's great. But what's he going to do against Kansas City? What's he going to do against Buffalo? A team who has owned the Dolphins since Josh Allen came into the league. What's he going to do against Cincinnati? I don't believe in Miami as a serious Super Bowl threat. Again, by like week 9, they could very well be, 5-3, 6-2, and coming off a game where Tua throws for 300 yards and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle each have 100 yards receiving and a lot of yak. Everybody's going to be like, oh, Miami. Like we have the past 2 seasons. And then once they reach the wild card round, yeah, Miami. They went to Kansas City and it was 20 degrees and they got their asses kicked. Or Miami, yeah, they had to go to Cincinnati and it was 2 below and they lost by 3 touchdowns. Yeah, I think that's kind of their ceiling right now. Now, is there a world where Mike McDaniel gets his Matthew Stafford and they trade for a Trevor Lawrence, or they go out and they get a Dak Prescott next offseason? Yeah. But as they're currently constructed, man, I don't take the Dolphins seriously. I don't. I think that's a team that is a very fun regular season team with a lot of speed. And then once you play real secondaries in the playoffs, they're cut off at the knee. And that's what their ceiling is right now. Again, do I think that the Dolphins could be a team that lands Dak Prescott in the offseason because it looks like there's some sort of crossroads between him and Dallas right now where they don't want to pay him again? It's possible. If things don't go well in Jacksonville again this season, could the Jaguars be stupid enough to trade Trevor Lawrence? Yeah. It's not as if Trent Baalke is one of the premier general managers in the NFL. We know that. Do I think they should do that? Absolutely not. But do I think that Jacksonville's dumb enough to do it? Yeah. Especially if they go like 9-8 again, 10-7, and are a first round exit in the playoffs. Or if they miss the playoffs altogether again. Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible that happens. So Miami, to me, they're, again, a regular season team that will probably put up good numbers. But when it comes to being Super Bowl threats, they're not. They are not. I'll tell you who I do think could be a Super Bowl threat. And I have them a little bit lower than I'd like to put them. But by season's end, they are going to be a ferocious team. I have the Green Bay Packers at 12. Jordan Love is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in football. And he put up the second most passing touchdowns in football last year without hitting his stride until like week 9. He had those 2 games at the beginning of the year where he threw 6 touchdowns combined in weeks 1 and 2. But then there was like a little bit of a lull. People were wondering, oh man, is Jordan Love actually that guy? Sorry, I'm going to slap my neck because that tattoo is starting to itch. But, there's people like, is Jordan Love really the guy? And then by like week 8, he picked it up and the Packers looked tremendous and went on a roll and got into the playoffs. And not only got into the playoffs, beat Dallas on the road as, what were they, a 7 seed? And they're doing it with such a young group. All 9 of Jordan Love's top pass catchers last year at wide receiver or tight end were first or second year players. That's absurd. And it's not as if they're scrub. I mean, Dontavian Wicks, really good. Jaden Reed, really good. Christian Watson filled his role very nicely. So they're a young team. Again, they're another team that I would have liked to have seen get more aggressive and get a veteran perimeter pass catcher. Or hell, even like right now, Hunter Renfrow is available to put in the slot. I think that would be a great signing for the Packers. So someone of that caliber, if they wanted to go get like a Tyler Boyd, I think that would be a really good addition for Green Bay. So I'd like to see them get like a veteran pass catcher just to have in that room, because that's the youngest team in the NFL right now, youngest offense in the NFL at least. And they also, the biggest question about Green Bay was, okay, well, how good is that defense going to be? Because Joe Barry was the biggest problem for them last year. And their secondary was an issue. Well, they bring in Xavier McKinney and give him a lot of money, 4-year deal, I think $77 million to play safety. Offensively, I hadn't really liked how they were handling Aaron Jones and the lack of playing time that he was getting. He's now in Minnesota. They bring over Josh Jacobs. That's a really reliable running back to have behind Jordan Love. Hopefully they utilize him correctly. But I'm really excited to see what this Packers team can do and what Jordan Love can do in year 2 of being the starter after throwing 32 touchdowns in his first year as the starter. And again, this group around him, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, they're going to take steps forward. And again, I would like to see them add a veteran presence at receiver, whether that be Tyler Boyd, Hunter Renfrow, or what have you. But Green Bay is a team that I think can make it to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, because you look at the difference in the disparages between the AFC and the NFC, where the AFC is a very quarterback-heavy conference. The NFC is more, great rosters. Well, if Green Bay can end up having a great quarterback and a really good roster, I think that catapults them near the top of the favorites in the NFC. Because Jordan Love right now, like I said, he's a top 10 quarterback in football. And the way that he played down the stretch last year, man, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he does in year 2 as the starter. And I think that Green Bay can be a team similar to Cincinnati a couple years ago that nobody expected to make it to the Super Bowl that does, but in the NFC. And a Bengals-Packers Super Bowl, yes, sign me up. I'm very intrigued in that, to see Joe Burrow versus Jordan Love. Or hell, a Texans-Packers Super Bowl, CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love. Hell yes. Give me that. I think that would be really fun. Especially the Texans-Packers Super Bowl would come, I think, a little bit out of left field, and 2 of the brightest young up-and-coming quarterbacks leading their teams to the Super Bowl, I think would be really cool. But keep Green Bay on your radars, because they are going to be very good this year. Dallas is 13. And I wrote it in the piece, like, they've made almost no external signings. Eric Kendricks is, I think, the only one that they've made. And look, when somebody consistently shows you who they are year in and year out, eventually you got to believe them. And right now, the Cowboys, they show us who they are year in and year out. They can be a good regular season team, but once those lights come on in the playoffs, they fold. So I don't take them serious as a Super Bowl contender. I don't care how good the roster may be. And even then, they haven't done anything to upgrade. They've signed Eric Kendricks. That's been their one external signing. Plus, they don't have a running back on the roster right now. Deuce Vaughn, I guess, is their running back right now. Tony Pollard's not there. I don't take Dallas seriously at all. And I think that I'll make a bold prediction right now. This is going to be Dak Prescott's last year in Dallas. I think that they just want to move on and start anew. I think that this is going to be Jerry's last hurrah of having a chance at winning a Super Bowl, and I think they're going to come up short. They haven't done nearly enough to make themselves better. And right now, like, okay, you got Dak, who's a good quarterback, and you got CeeDee Lamb, who's a very good receiver. They just released Michael Gallup. I'm pretty sure they still have Brandon Cooks. I don't think he's a free agent. I could be wrong about that. I'd have to go look. But they don't have a lot of depth at receiver. They don't have a running back on the roster right now that's starting caliber. Defensively, they have Micah, who's obviously great. But in the secondary, like, okay, Trevon Diggs is coming off season-ending injury. Stephon Gilmore's old. I don't take Dallas seriously as a Super Bowl contender whatsoever. Whatsoever, man. So I think this is going to be kind of their last hurrah of having any sort of a chance to win a Super Bowl. I think that Mike McCarthy's gone after this year. I think Dak Prescott leaves and goes elsewhere, maybe Miami. But I don't take Dallas seriously, man. I don't take them seriously at all. I have the Steelers at 14, which is kind of where they hovered last year. I think I have them usually between, like, at the lowest, like 20, and at the highest, I think, was actually like 14. And look, the thing that I've been saying as a Steelers fan is I don't expect Justin Fields or Russell Wilson to become top 10, 12 quarterbacks. But if if Russ and or Justin Fields are the 17th, 18th best quarterback in football and everything else lives up to its potential, Steelers can win 10, 11 games. They won 10 games last year with the worst quarterback play in football. And they're playing a third place schedule again. They played a third place schedule last year. So looking at their opponents, they play the AFC West and they play the NFC East this year, as well as obviously the division opponents. Can they beat the Chargers? Yes. Can they beat the Raiders? Absolutely. Well, I think they'll beat the Chiefs? No. Can they beat the Broncos? Yes. And that game is, by the way, in Mile High. And how fun would it be if Russell Wilson is still a starter whenever they have that game? I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that's a week 1 game on like Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football, or they send Buck and Aikman. Because again, they did that 2 years ago where they kicked off the season with Russ in Seattle, where the Seahawks beat Denver because Nathaniel Hackett tried like 80-yard field goal or whatever the hell it was, rather than give Russ a chance to convert a 4th down. I would not be surprised whatsoever if that's like a week 1 or 2 game on Monday Night Football where the Steelers go to Mile High and Russ is the starter. And how funny would it be if he goes off for like 350, 3 touchdowns, and the Steelers win convincingly? I think that would be really funny and really nice for Russ. But should they beat Denver? Yes. They've actually had trouble with Denver in recent memory. The last time they were in Denver, they lost, which was 2018. 2018, that sounds about right. 2018, yes. Yeah, because it was the year before Ben hurt his elbow. And it's the year that they went 9-6-1 and collapsed down the stretch. So 2018 was the last time they were in Denver. And they beat the Broncos in 2020 in the COVID year at Pittsburgh. They lost in 2018, beat them in 2020. I don't think they've played them since then. I'm pretty sure they have not played the Broncos since 2020. I'd have to refresh my memory. Regardless, looking at their schedule, they can win 10 games. They won 10 games last year against the third place schedule. And again, if Justin Fields and or Russell Wilson are just middle of the pack, okay quarterbacks, and everything else on that roster lives up to its potential, they can win 10, 11 games and be a playoff team again. So Steelers are 14, and we'll see what comes of that. Number 15, I have the Browns. I'm so curious what the Browns will look like, because we know that their defense is really good. They just traded for Jerry Jeudy, which is a trade I liked. I don't like how much money they gave him, but having him to complement Amari Cooper, I think that's a really good signing, or a really good trade. It just depends on Watson. It just depends on Watson. They went through a merry-go-round of quarterbacks last year, and out of all of them, Flacco was the best. Was Watson the second best? So, best case scenario, they're starting the second best quarterback on the roster from last year, who they're paying so much money and who has been so bad since they acquired him. Very similar to the situation that Denver was in with Russell Wilson, except the Browns are giving him so much money, so much guaranteed money. Like, I really don't see a way that they can cut him until like 2026, I think is the earliest that would make sense. So they better hope that he plays well. Because seeing what Flacco did last year off the couch, and he was easily their best quarterback last year. That says a lot about how much they're paying Watson, and he needs to be better. And we'll see if he is. But that entire thing, man. Oh, man, that's going to be interesting for the Browns. I have the Jets at 16. I put them smack dab in the middle because, I like the moves that they've made. They've made multiple moves to improve their really bad offensive line. They bring in Mike Williams to complement Garrett Wilson as a vertical threat. So I think that's a smart move. Again, they gave Mike Williams too much money. But even that, it's difficult to kind of place them any lower or any higher because we don't know how Rodgers is going to look. And, if Rodgers is even like 75% of what he was a few years ago, then that's still, a good quarterback, a top 12 quarterback in the league. With that defense, that's a team that could be a playoff team. But if Rodgers struggles, then, I think we're going to see them fall down the rankings a little bit more. It's hard. It would be very hard for them to get worse than what they were at quarterback play last year. And I don't think they're going to be nearly that bad for obvious reasons, because it was Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. And I think there was one more. Did Trevor Siemian start a game for them last year? I would have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure they had 3 quarterbacks that started games last year, and they were all bad. So I have the Jets in the middle. Could they climb up that list? Obviously, if Rodgers plays well and they're winning games, sure. But I don't know how Rodgers is going to look. I think he'll be okay, but that is a team that is very up in the air. The Colts are at 17. They were a borderline playoff team last year with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. They get Anthony Richardson back, who looked very fun and very talented in the month that we saw him before he got hurt. Hopefully he can stay healthy. They are 17. I have the Jaguars at 18. They've been so bad this offseason and the way that they've gone about their business. They dragged their feet with the Calvin Ridley situation, because it definitely appears that they assumed that he would come back on a relatively team-friendly deal. And then the Titans swooped in. Was it 4 years, $92 million with $50 million guaranteed? And Calvin Ridley said, well, I'll go to Tennessee. They haven't got a long-term deal done with Josh Allen yet. They tagged him. They had to release guys like Darius Williams, who was good for them last year, to be able to afford the tag. They're just a mess right now. They brought in Gabe Davis, who I think that a lot of people overrate Gabe Davis. Look at his performances last year. There were so many games where he had 1 or 0 catches. Gabe Davis is the 3rd receiver on a really good team, and he does one thing well. That's run the 9 route, catch some deep balls. If he catches 1 or 2 deep balls a game, mission accomplished. He doesn't do anything else. And he run blocks. He doesn't do anything else well. So I don't really get the Gabe Davis signing. And right now, they don't really have a number 1 receiver. Christian Kirk is a predominant slot guy. I just talked about why I don't like the Gabe Davis signing. I think Zay Jones is still there, but they need a legitimate number 1. So I would expect them to get aggressive and either trade up for somebody like a Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. Or even if they stay put, they can take an A.D. Mitchell out of Texas, a Brian Thomas out of LSU, or what have you. But they need somebody, a real legitimate number 1 guy for Lawrence to throw the ball to. People have been too low on Trevor Lawrence as well, by the way. He had 14 interceptions last year. Half of those came in the final month of the season when he was dealing with a bum ankle, a bum calf, a bum shoulder. He's getting the hell beat out of him and having to keep the Jaguars in games almost single-handedly. So obviously he had to take some chances. And that first game back after he hurt, I think it was the calf against Cleveland, he had 3 interceptions in that game alone. So I think we're being a little bit unfair to Trevor Lawrence. And I think he's going to have a fine year. But again, the Jaguars are doing a horrible job of taking advantage of a really good quarterback on a rookie contract, and they have done nothing well to build around him. And that's pretty much Trent Baalke in a nutshell, I guess, at the end of the day. Seattle is 19. I think that they'll be in the midst of the NFC wildcard race. We'll see how good Geno is if he can stay healthy all year. They traded for Sam Howell, who might be the best backup quarterback in football right now. Outside of Justin Fields, if you want to make that argument, but Sam Howell had a really solid year last year. Had too many turnovers, sure, but he was a former 6th round pick, 5th round pick, whatever it was, starting, and it was at one point leading the NFL in passing yards for a long stretch of time. So they have a lot of turnover on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see how Mike Macdonald is at head coach. I think that's going to be, a big change going from Pete Carroll as head coach, obviously. But I think that they're talented enough to remain in the NFC wildcard race. And then to round out the top 20, the Los Angeles Chargers. And the only reason that they're even that high is because they have a tremendous quarterback. And even then, much like Jacksonville, they have done a god-awful job of building around him. I liked the hiring of Jim Harbaugh as head coach, and then he hired Greg Roman, his buddy, as offensive coordinator, and immediately I was out. Because Greg Roman's offense stinks. There's a reason he's been fired from the 49ers and fired from the Ravens. And his schemes don't fit what Justin Herbert does. A Greg Roman offense works really well for a year or two when it has a mobile quarterback that can run read option, RPOs, things of that nature. Justin Herbert isn't going to be a guy who's running read options. It makes no sense. And of course, they signed Gus Edwards from Baltimore as if that's going to do anything. And they bring back Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack and move on from both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. His number one receiver right now is Josh Palmer. Now, they're very much likely to take a receiver in the first round, which they need to, because, again, who the hell is Justin Herbert going to throw to? It also wouldn't shock me if they were to take Brock Bowers, because in Greg Roman's system, tight ends are very prevalent. See Vernon Davis in San Francisco, see Mark Andrews in Baltimore. But they need a lot on offense, and they need that defense was really bad the last few years under Brandon Staley. They still have pieces. Asante Samuel's a good player. Derwin James is a good player. But they haven't been able to get anything out of them. So there's a lot to be done with the Chargers. They've done a really bad job of building around this incredible quarterback. And it's a new regime. I get it. There's going to be a new GM. And their former one, Tom Telesco, is now at the Raiders, which is just the Raiders made the two dumbest hires that they could have made at GM and offensive coordinator, hiring Tom Telesco and Luke Getsy. I think that's going to be a tire fire for the Raiders, by the way. But Justin Herbert is the only thing that keeps the Chargers relevant and is why they're even that high at 20. So that's, again, dove into the top 20. You can go read the rest. You see the ticker at the bottom. If I didn't get into your team, or if you just want to read more in depth of what I did write about your team, go read the post free agency NFL power rankings over on Touchdown Wire for USA Today, and see what I said about your squad. 32-1 post free agency NFL power rankings. That'll just about do it for this edition of the Pump Fake. Come back next week, Tuesday. I'll be joined by the incredible Amy Trask, which would be a lot of fun. It's always good talking to Amy. So she'll be joining me on Tuesday. And, if any other breaking news happens, we'll do, a breaking news stream on the YouTube. And if the Steelers do anything, obviously I'll do a news stream on the YouTube. But Amy Trask will be joining me on Tuesday on the Pump Fake. And I'm very much looking forward to that. And I appreciate you guys listening to this edition of the Pump Fake. And I'll see you in a few days with Amy Trask to break down all of the NFL free agent news and the trades and everything of that sort. That'll be Tuesday with Amy Trask right back here on the Pump Fake. And I'm looking forward to seeing you. Talk to you then.